Can you even recall when Las Vegas felt like an offering, not an invoice? When the neon wasn't screaming for your wallet, but whispering a seductive welcome? The lights, they burn with a desperate, blinding intensity now, but the soul behind them has been extinguished. Vegas once made the forgotten feel like kings, the timid feel like stars, the ordinary believe in the infinite. Now every single sparkle seems to have a price tag attached, a hidden surcharge. The very charm that made this desert oasis glitter has been systematically dismantled, piece by treacherous piece, fee by predatory fee. But make no mistake, this isn't just about the money. It's about the soul-crushing void the money was brought in to replace. So tonight, we are exposing the 9 ghosts of Las Vegas. The things we have been forced to watch die. From the simple, free handshake that once greeted you at the door, to the very spirit that made you believe the dream was real and within your grasp. We begin with number 9, the absolute death of free parking. Picture it. You've driven for hours across a desolate black desert. Your headlights finally pierce the darkness and catch that first distant shimmer of neon. An electric, sacred promise that you have finally arrived. You'd pull into a garage the size of a small nation, step out, and simply walk away for free. No ticket, no validation, no gnawing anxiety. That was the unspoken welcome, the opening gesture of the real Las Vegas. It was a city that threw its arms open and declared, "The night is yours, stay as long as you dare." But free parking was never about generosity. It was cold, calculating genius. The old casinos understood human nature with a chilling precision that no modern marketing firm could ever hope to replicate. Arrive calm, unburdened by the nickel and dime bleed, and you would gamble longer, tip bigger, and walk away with the dangerous illusion that you'd been treated with respect. Even if you lost it all, that garage was the gateway, the first clean impression, and it cost you absolutely nothing. Then, in the dark year of 2016, that sacred silent contract was shattered. MGM Resorts unleashed the plague of paid parking on its properties, a venomous policy shift that spread like a terminal disease. 10, then 15, soon even $30, a ransom demanded based on the whim of the night. Locals who once treated the strip as their own backyard were exiled. Tourists, already steeling themselves for the onslaught of resort fees and criminally overpriced drinks, were sucker punched before they even checked in. It was never just about the money. It was about the chilling message it sent. Vegas was no longer inviting you in. It was building a wall and charging you admission to your own dream. The fallout from this betrayal cut deeper than anyone could have imagined. For decades, free parking was the bedrock of a social contract, a potent illusion of equality. Where else on this planet could a factory worker from Detroit pull up to $1 billion palace of light, leave his car without a second thought, and for one fleeting, glorious moment, feel like he owned the entire goddamn place? That illusion was priceless. You take that away, and the magic itself becomes smaller, colder, conditional. Oh yes, the casinos now rake in tens of millions of dollars annually from those concrete tombs, but for every dollar they gained in revenue, they hemorrhaged a fortune in goodwill. The one currency Vegas once printed in infinite supply. Because free parking was never just asphalt and painted yellow lines. It was a philosophy. It was a declaration that this city, this fantasy, belonged to everyone. And when that declaration was rescinded, the first, most crucial spark of belonging was snuffed out. The strip still glows, but a radiant part of its soul went dark forever with that policy. And the next catastrophic loss wasn't written on a parking receipt. It shimmered under the spotlights, a ghost draped in feathers and sequins that had defined the city's very identity for half a century. Number 8, the calculated murder of the showgirl. When you think of Las Vegas in its prime, close your eyes. What is the first image that burns into your mind? It's not a corporate logo, it's not some vapid DJ in a booth, but a goddess. 10 feet tall in heels, with feathers that scraped the heavens and sequins that shattered 1,000 beams of light. That was the Las Vegas showgirl.
She was never a gimmick. She was the city's very soul, its most brilliant, audacious, and unapologetic ambassador. From the 1950s all the way through the 1980s, spectacles like Folie Bergère at the Tropicana or the legendary Jubilee at Bally's were not mere side attractions. They were the thunderous, beating heart of the entire strip. Each production was a monumental epic with live orchestras, sets that towered like cathedrals, and choreography that put Broadway to shame. The showgirl was the living embodiment of the Vegas promise. Absolute glamour without a trace of guilt. Pure extravagance without a single apology. She stood for a world where the mundane rules of your life ceased to exist and reality was checked at the door like a coat. Tourists didn't just buy tickets, they were buying a license to dream. A school teacher from Kansas, a couple celebrating an anniversary from Ohio, a soldier on his last night of leave. They all sat in those same velvet seats, utterly hypnotized by the shimmer, the music, the myth. Vegas wasn't peddling nudity. It was selling something far more potent. Unabashed confidence, pure fantasy, and the radical idea that here, in this desert, even the impossible looked graceful. But then, the feathers began to fall. By the 1990s, the cold, hard numbers on the strip's balance sheets began to scream louder than its orchestra pits. These lavish, breathtaking productions cost millions a year to maintain, and the new breed of accountants saw a much simpler, uglier math in cheap strobe lights and pre-recorded DJ sets. The younger crowd, they claimed, wanted bass drops, not some cheap imitation. By 2016, when Jubilee's lights went dark for good after a staggering 35-year reign, a sacred era was declared dead. The last of the performers were cast out, not onto grand stages, but left to pose with tourists for pocket change under the merciless desert sun. Today, Vegas still puts on a glittering facade, but the shimmer is a lie. The screens are just brighter, the speakers just louder, but none of it, not 1 decibel, can ever replace the breathless moment a showgirl owned that stage. The orchestra thundered, and the entire world outside that room simply ceased to exist. She was never just a performer. She was the living, breathing embodiment of the city's founding magic, the defiant belief that pure beauty could shatter reality. And when they let her vanish, they ripped the very soul out of Las Vegas. Paris has its Eiffel Tower. New York has Broadway. Vegas had her. Now, this city shamelessly peddles noise over nuance, a hollow spectacle devoid of a single shred of intimacy. And that brings us, with chilling inevitability, to the next treasure they tore down. The nights when you didn't need a ticket, a wristband, or a reservation to witness greatness. When the world's most legendary stars sang just feet away, not for a privileged elite, but for anyone and everyone who just happened to wander in. This is the ghost of number 7, the era of the lounge acts. I want you to see this. The year is 1972. You've just gorged on a $1.99 prime rib buffet. The air is thick with cigarette smoke and raw ambition. You drift into some small casino lounge. There's no ticket, no humiliating line, no velvet rope to tell you you're not good enough. You order a $2 martini and sink into a seat under the sinful red glow of the stage lights. And then, out of nowhere, a voice detonates in the room. It's Tom Jones, live and unleashed with a full band. It's Sammy Davis Jr. landing a joke that could crack ribs. Maybe, just maybe, Elvis himself decides to drop by after his midnight show, just to sing a few for the hell of it. And you are 5 feet away from a god. That was the sacred, profane magic of the Vegas Lounge Act. A time when true luxury meant access for all. The casinos didn't dare charge for it. They understood a far more profound truth. Free, mind-blowing entertainment was the ultimate trap, keeping people at the tables. You had to give your guests a story they could never, ever buy back home, and they would crawl back over broken glass for more. You didn't need a fortune to feel like a king. All you needed was a seat, a song, and the terrifying electric promise that anything could happen next. Every single night crackled with that thrill of the utterly unexpected. Velvet booths, cocktail trays floating on fingertips, the sharp clink of ice, the warm, dangerous crackle of an amplifier coming to life. You could literally feel the room humming, a tense wire stretched between ordinary people and extraordinary God-given talent. One night it's Wayne Newton, the next, it's Sinatra himself, materializing like an apparition. The band would scramble, a beautiful panic, to find his key. People would stumble out of that room believing they had just witnessed the impossible. And in the real Vegas, the impossible was always the entire point. But by the early 2000s, that intimacy was hunted down and extinguished. Cold corporate math replaced gut instinct. Every last square foot of casino floor had to bleed profit. The free lounges were gutted, reimagined, or ripped out entirely. The very space that once hosted spontaneous legends now demanded obscene bottle service fees and minimum spends. And in their place, the superstar residency. Predictable, packaged, profitable. Instead of glorious spontaneity, Vegas began selling you a schedule. Instead of the thrill of discovery, it sold you tiered access. What was once a democratic temple of sound became an exclusive club for the rich. No more surprise duets, no more hushed whispers of a Sinatra sighting at 2 in the morning, just tickets, tears, and taxes. And the real tragedy isn't the insulting price tag, it's the calculated murder of wonder. That heart-stopping feeling that something legendary was about to erupt right here, right now, and you were a chosen witness. The lounge acts were the very heartbeat of the Strip. They were messy, they were human, they were dangerously alive. And when they vanished, Vegas flatlined. The city still puts on a show, but now the curtain feels like a shroud. The smiles are rehearsed, because what they built next wasn't about music or mystery. It was about cold, hard money, absolute power, and the chilling precision of control. The kind of control that the old mob bosses, for all their sins, understood far better than the boardroom suits who dug their graves. Number 6. The mafia's personal touch versus the soullessness of corporate greed. You say the word mafia and people see a caricature. Danger, smoke-choked back rooms, briefcases overflowing with cash, men in sharp suits with smiles that never reached their eyes. But dare to ask anyone who walked these streets in the 1960s or 70s, and they'll tell you something that will shake you. Back then, Vegas, under the mob, it felt personal. It wasn't clean, God knows it wasn't moral, but it was brutally human. If you sat at their tables, whether you bet $20 or $20,000, you were treated like a monarch. The pit bosses knew your name. The dealers had free drinks coming before the thought even formed in your mind. If you put in the time, someone would quietly comp your entire dinner, a steakhouse voucher appearing in your hand like magic. Or you'd find your room had been silently upgraded to a suite. The rule was brutally simple. Keep the guests happy and they will always come back. Hospitality wasn't some focus-grouped marketing strategy. It was a matter of survival. The mobsters didn't need your damn loyalty card. They knew loyalty by looking you in the eye. They didn't have an algorithm tracking your average daily theoretical loss. They tracked the look on your face as you walked out that door. There was once a sacred code in Old Vegas, a promise whispered in the neon glow. Make every guest feel like a king, if only for one night. Even a humble school teacher from Kansas could return home with a story. They treated me like I owned the place. But then came the corporate sanitization. In the late 1980s and early 90s, the soulless titans, Mirage Resorts, MGM, Caesars, seized control. The visceral danger of the mob was extinguished, and the cold, calculating tyranny of the spreadsheet began. In that clinical exchange, the very soul of the city was ripped out. Now, every drink you're served, every room you're assigned, every so-called freebie is ruthlessly calibrated by software. You are no longer a person. You are a data point to be exploited. Dare to be thirsty? $8. Park your own car? That'll be $25. The mandatory resort fee? A $45 shakedown. The human handshake has been replaced by a loyalty number spat out on a receipt. Let's be clear, the mob's generosity was drenched in darkness. Intimidation, skimming, and brutal violence were their tools of the trade. But beneath that terrifying surface was a strange, raw-edged humanity, a pulse that proved people, not algorithms, ran this town. In their relentless crusade to sanitize Vegas, the corporate giants didn't just erase the crime, they extinguished its very soul. This desert once crackled with a dangerous, vibrant personality. Now, it's just a cold monument to ruthless efficiency. And the truly bitter irony is this: the mob's dirty hospitality made you feel clean, cared for, and remembered. Today's corporate hospitality just makes you feel managed, quantified, and processed in a city built on the illusion of escape. This catastrophic shift from loyalty to pure predatory extraction is perhaps the cruelest illusion this city has ever sold. And as the glorious era of free steaks and comped buffets withered and died, Vegas didn't just lose its handshake, it lost its very appetite for generosity. Because what came next wasn't a gesture of goodwill, it was just another item on the menu. It was a single glass that turned a luxury into a ritual, that made equality a legend, and for just 99 cents, it made even the poorest visitor feel like a king. Number 5. The tragic tale of the 99-cent shrimp cocktail. What force on earth could make tourists line up for blocks, grinning with a childlike wonder that has long since vanished? It wasn't a jackpot, it wasn't a superstar, it was a chilled glass of shrimp cocktail for a mere 99 cents. In the year 1959, the Golden Gate Hotel and Casino on Fremont Street unleashed this now mythical offering. Its genius was its profound simplicity. A cheap plastic cup overflowing with cocktail sauce, a defiant wedge of lemon, and a pile of cold shrimp. No silver platter, no tuxedoed waiter, just instant, democratic satisfaction. But this was never, ever about the shrimp. It was about the defiant statement it made. Back home, shrimp was a luxury, a treasure reserved for weddings and anniversaries. But in Vegas, it became an act of everyday magic. That tiny glass screamed a promise to every person who walked through the door. Here, you can live large no matter how little you have. It was the city's entire philosophy, served on ice. The 99-cent shrimp cocktail was not a side dish. It was a symbol of rebellion. It declared that Vegas was not the exclusive playground of the rich. It was a haven for dreamers, for college kids, for retirees, for high rollers, all of them standing shoulder to shoulder, equals in the same line. For one glorious, perfect bite, everyone was the same. And that feeling, that breathtaking equality, was priceless. But time, as always, came to collect its debt. By the 2000s, the cold realities of rising food costs and thinning profit margins began to suffocate the dream. The price insidiously crept up from $1.99 to $2.99, then an insulting $4.99, and by the 2010s, a staggering $7.99. The deal of the century was quietly assassinated. Then, in 2019, after 6 long decades, the Golden Gate unceremoniously executed its most famous creation. You can still order shrimp on the strip today, of course, for $25 to $35, served in a pretentious martini glass hidden behind a velvet rope. It's still cold, it's still pink, it's still shrimp, but it no longer tastes like victory. It tastes like distance. It tastes of the vast, unbridgeable chasm between what Vegas was and the corporate wasteland it has become. Because when the 99-cent shrimp vanished, it took our collective sense of belonging with it. People never lined up for the shrimp. They lined up for the intoxicating feeling of beating the system. $1 for a taste of luxury was a win before you ever gambled a dime. Now the system is rigged to ensure it always wins. And the city that once built its empire bragging about bargains, now brags about its cold, heartless exclusivity. You can still buy indulgence here. You just can't afford innocence anymore. And if the shrimp was the small luxury that offered a fleeting taste of wealth, what they stole next was infinitely more personal. It was never on a menu. It was a feeling in the air, a sense that no matter who you were, a tourist, a teacher, a truck driver, this city actually saw you. It valued you. And sometimes it handed you something for free, just because. Number 4, the extinction of comps for the common man. There was a time when the word comp wasn't spat out by a spreadsheet or dictated by loyalty points. It was an expression of gratitude. You could walk into a casino with just $20 to your name, sit down at a nickel slot, and before you knew it, a cocktail waitress would appear as if by magic, drink in hand, a real smile on her face. If you played a little longer, a pit boss might even stroll over, shake your hand like you were somebody, and slide you a voucher for the buffet. No app, no algorithm, just a quiet human gesture that said, "We see you and we appreciate you." That connection has been utterly and irrevocably severed. But let's be clear, in the Las Vegas that truly mattered, comps were never about cheap luxury. They were about a sacred sense of belonging. It made no difference if you were a high roller or a school teacher from Ohio. You were a vital character in the city's grand story. A free steak dinner wasn't some trivial perk. It was a solemn testament that this city saw you, that it valued you enough to give something meaningful back. And that single gesture was the very lifeblood of Vegas hospitality. The mob, of all people, understood this first. Keep the customer happy, truly happy, and they are yours for life. This was a bond built on personal loyalty, not the cold calculating metrics of data-driven marketing that built this city's reputation. Even the first wave of corporations in the 1980s had the sense to keep that sacred tradition alive. If you simply looked like you were having the time of your life, you were an investment. The real gamble wasn't on the tables, it was on the relationships. And then the rot set in. In the 2000s, the casinos unleashed their loyalty programs, all shackled to invasive digital tracking. Comps were no longer spontaneous acts of generosity, they were coldly calculated. Every spin, every single bet, every moment you hesitated was logged and analyzed. If your average daily theoretical loss didn't meet their soulless quota, the perks vanished. A pit boss, once a king, couldn't override the algorithm. The human handshake was replaced by a pathetic digital notification. You've earned 0.03 rewards. The magic was quietly executed. Drinks that were once a guaranteed courtesy now demanded a minimum tribute. Buffet vouchers were twisted into condescending tiered incentives. Even the casino staff, once priding themselves on remembering names, were reduced to checking ID numbers on a screen. The entire relationship between guest and casino degenerated into a transaction, precise, efficient, and utterly lifeless. Comps once wove incredible stories. Tourists went home, their voices filled with awe, bragging. They gave us an incredible dinner just for playing a little. That was priceless. Word of mouth advertising. That joy has now become a myth. Today, those stories are reserved only for the whales in their isolated penthouses, never for the families hoping for a little luck at the nickel slots. And with that devastating shift, Vegas lost something far deeper than freebies. It lost its soul of inclusion, the foundational belief that anyone could feel like royalty, if only for one spectacular night. Because the second that free drink became just another data point, the magic of human reciprocity was gone forever. And so was the awe inspired by the buildings themselves, the magnificent themed casinos that made you feel like you'd entered another dimension, before a plague of sameness made everything look identical. Number 3, the death of themed casinos. I dare you, close your eyes and remember the visceral feeling of walking the strip in the 1990s. It wasn't a sterile parade of glass towers and minimalist logos. It was imagination made manifest. Each casino was a sprawling movie set, a universe within a universe. You didn't just visit Vegas. You were transported to ancient Rome at Caesar's Palace, where colossal marble columns shimmered under opulent golden chandeliers. You became an explorer in ancient Egypt at the Luxor, its immense black pyramid pulsing with an otherworldly light, a beam so powerful it could be seen from the darkness of space. You witnessed a thunderous pirate battle exploding every hour in front of Treasure Island.
You watched a volcano violently erupt outside the Mirage,
its fire and smoke performing a primal dance over the water. And when you stepped inside Excalibur, you had left Nevada far behind. You were now a subject in a medieval kingdom. Back then, the Strip was a playground for the human imagination. This was never just about gambling. It was about world building. Families journeyed here for the sheer spectacle. Couples came for the unique novelty. Even the most jaded cynics walked away smiling because every casino had a soul, a distinct theme, a promise of adventure. It was the undeniable golden age of immersion. That era began its slow, painful death in the early 2000s. Corporate executives decided that all this creativity was too kitsch, too expensive, and too unpredictable for their Wall Street overlords. One by one, they began to methodically strip away the personality. Treasure Island was neutered to just TI. No more pirate battles, just bland, overpriced dining. The Luxor's mystique was dimmed, its grand pyramid hollowed out and stuffed with generic convention space. The Mirage, the revolutionary mega resort that ignited this era in 1989, is now being gutted to become just another Hard Rock tower. Its iconic volcano is scheduled for demolition in 2024. And what replaced these wonders? Sleek, empty glass boxes. Luxury hotels so generic they could exist anywhere. Miami, Dubai, Singapore. Themed Vegas was never perfect, but it was dangerously distinct. Every visit felt new. You could walk a single mile and cross entire continents. Now, the Strip feels like one continuous, monotonous shopping mall wrapped in a cage of LED lights. It is uniform, predictable, safe, and completely soulless. Vegas was once built on fantasy, not efficiency. It was about epic stories, not cold, hard statistics. When the themes died, the wonder died with them. The Strip stopped transporting people. It started processing them. And when you murder fantasy, what is left? A price tag, that's all. Because after the pirates, pyramids, and palaces were bulldozed into memory, Vegas didn't just lose its imagination, it lost its entire sense of value. It lost the feeling that you could live like a king, even on a pauper's budget. And that brings us to the second great loss. The catastrophic betrayal of the promise that made this city world famous. A cheap trick, a gilded lie. The fantasy they sold us was that anyone could strike it rich, even before the reels started turning. Which brings us to the second casualty, the myth of Value Vegas. Once upon a time, Las Vegas peddled a deceptively simple and poisonous dream that you didn't need a fortune to feel like royalty. That was the con of Value Vegas. A brilliant marketing scheme that became a cultural phenomenon. All-you-can-eat feasts for mere pocket lint. A room for a measly $30 a night. Entertainment that cost less than a cheap meal in your hometown. It was a world where you could wander through glittering palaces, rest beneath crystal chandeliers, and somehow miraculously leave with cash still in your pocket. Oh, Vegas understood the human mind better than any psychologist. It knew that if you could make people believe they were getting a bargain, their wallets would fly open. If a $5 buffet made them feel smart, they wouldn't think twice about torching $50 at the blackjack table. It was a perfect system where everyone won. Or so the grand deception went. And on that magnificent lie, an empire was built. But then, the rot began to set in. The deal started to sour. By the mid-2000s and 10s, the devil's details emerged from the shadows. Those once hidden resort fees became a blatant, unavoidable tax. First, it was $25, then a shocking $40, and now an outrageous $55 a night at the big-name resorts. Parking, a once guaranteed freebie, became just another shakedown. And that beloved $5 buffet, it bloated into a $70 gourmet experience nobody asked for. The drinks that used to flow freely now carry a punitive surcharge. Even a simple cup of coffee, once a $1 afterthought, now commands a $12 ransom. And the very hotel rooms that once welcomed middle-class America now slam the door in its face. The numbers don't lie. They scream the ugly truth. Back in 2008, the average room on the Strip was $92. Fast forward to 2024, and that price has skyrocketed past $180. And that's the base price before they bleed you dry with taxes, fees, and those non-negotiable add-ons. The promise that built this city, live like a king for a night, is now nothing more than a bitter, cynical joke. The locals were the first to abandon ship. The Strip was once their backyard, their sacred Friday night ritual. Now, they just drive by, staring at the glittering trap, knowing that every drink, every plate of food, every single parking space is a calculated ripoff. Then the tourists started to wise up. The middle-class families who made a pilgrimage twice a year now stay home, denouncing the city for the grift it has become. The Canadians who once swarmed in for weekend blowouts are now forced to do the grim arithmetic. A $50 resort fee, $20 beers, $30 ride shares. Suddenly, the party's over. Value Vegas, the city's crowning achievement, was ultimately suffocated by its own insatiable greed. And be warned, when value is extinguished, the sense of belonging dies with it. Vegas is no longer a shared escape. It's a members-only club. It feels cold, calculated, transactional. The beautiful illusion that anyone could win has been shattered and replaced by the cold, hard certainty that the house always wins, and you're just another mark. And this leads us to the final, most gut-wrenching casualty in this tragedy. Because what they stole from us wasn't just a cheap deal, a buffet, or a bargain. It was something far more profound. It was something you can't just rebuild with imported marble and slick ad campaigns. The one thing this city of illusions can no longer pretend to have, its soul. And that is the number one thing we've lost, the very soul of Las Vegas. Let me tell you the ugly truth that no one in power wants to admit. The greatest loss we suffered in Las Vegas wasn't the free parking, the cheap shrimp, or the kitschy-themed hotels. It was a feeling. It was that intangible electric pulse in the air that whispered, "You belong here." This city was never just about the cards and the slots. If all you wanted was a casino, you had countless other soulless options. Reno, Atlantic City, some miserable cruise ship adrift in the ocean. No, what made Vegas Vegas was something you could never quantify. It was the magic that let you step off a Greyhound with $50 in your pocket and feel like a titan of industry for a weekend. It didn't matter if you were a teacher from Ohio, a mechanic from Phoenix, or a factory worker from Detroit, you walked the very same neon-drenched pavement as tycoons and film icons. Everyone, from the bottom to the top, chasing that same elusive spark of fortune. It was the great equalizer, hidden beneath a veneer of glorious excess. But today, that heartbeat has faded to a whisper. The Strip still glitters, but it's a cold, sterile light. Genuine hospitality has been systematically replaced by corporate policy. Generosity has been supplanted by a litany of fees, and authentic personality has been suffocated by soulless, focus-grouped branding. The old Vegas welcomed you with a warm smile and a cheap steak. The new Vegas greets you with a cold QR code and an automatic service charge. The city that once threw its arms open to everyone has now mastered the art of pricing people out. Tiered memberships, dynamic pricing, velvet-roped lounges for the elite. Every single thing that made this place feel human, that made it feel like it belonged to us, has been auctioned off to the highest bidder. And what's left is a stunning, ruthlessly efficient, and utterly soulless machine. Because the lifeblood of this city was never the neon signs, the dancing fountains, or the ringing jackpots. It was the sacred promise that for a little while, this city was your city too. Just ask anyone who remembers what it was like. They'll all tell you the same tragic story. It's just not the same. The lights are still bright, the fountains still perform their ballet. But something sacred has been ripped from its heart. You see, Vegas hasn't just changed its appearance. It has changed its very purpose and who it serves. And in its obsessive chase for corporate perfection, it completely forgot that its messy, beautiful imperfections were what we loved. And perhaps that's why the nostalgia is so painful, because we all know, in our hearts, that the jackpots, the buffets, the freebies, they were never the true reward.
The grand prize was always that priceless feeling of belonging, even if only for a single fleeting night. And so, Las Vegas stands, glittering and loud, a beautiful corpse. It will remain defiant, endlessly cannibalizing itself to be reborn. It's a cycle it has always craved. But for those of us who remember the humanity behind the neon glow, the genuine welcome hidden by the gaudy theatrics, the simple kindness lost in the clamor, that city has been erased. And this is the devastating price of so-called progress, a fool's bargain. You can power the glittering facade until the end of time, but once its soul is extinguished, there is no jackpot in the universe big enough to buy it back.